To crack CAT, you need a lot of practice, and you can practice by taking Krako's free mock. Just Google search Krako free CAT mock. Follow the link to get the free mock. We have put in a free mock with the latest pattern and with detailed solutions. Hi friends, welcome to Krako's video series. I'm Saili Kale. I'm one of the co-founders of Krako and an alumna of IIM Ahmedabad. In today's video, we'll be discussing how to crack CAT in 30 days. So many of you must have started preparation a while earlier. Many students prepare for an entire year. But suppose you are at this position where you have 30 days left to CAT and you have not done much till now. So how do you go about this? So in our last video, 50 days to CAT, we had a strategy where we picked topics according to where we can get the most marks from. When now there are 30 days left to CAT, I think there is a realistic chance where you won't be able to cover all the topics that are there in CAT. So what I would suggest, now that you have only 30 days left, that is a limited amount of time left, we will try to focus on the core areas as such. So if you think of it, there's this story about big rocks, small rocks and sand. So the story goes in this way that if you have big rocks, small rocks and sand, if you fill in the sand first, then the smaller rocks, then the bigger rocks, you'll not be able to fit in things in the jar. But if you go the other way around, where if you fill in the big rocks first, then the smaller rocks and finally the sand, you'll be able to fit in everything in the jar as such. This is supposed to demonstrate how you should prioritize things in your life, where the bigger things that are like your relationships with your family, etc., should be prioritized ahead of smaller things such as like your smaller work commitments over even smaller commitments. So that is essentially the ideology that we are going to follow. Now that we have a very limited time left for CAT, we will be trying to first fit in the big stones, then the smaller rocks, and then finally the sand. So what would each of these be? So if we consider the weightage that is given to each topic, the bigger stones or the bulk of it in quant is arithmetic and geometry, in verbal is RC. So these are essentially the big rocks that you must always fit in first in your jar as such. Because LR is so varied, it is very difficult to predict what will actually come in the final CAT. And it's very difficult to practice also. So there is nothing that you can do to prepare. So we'll say that we don't have much of a big rock over there. We have a couple of smaller rocks from DILR, but the big rocks that you need to take care of for CAT are arithmetic, geometry and RC. So let's say that these are the big rocks that you need to fit in first. So if once you've had some preparation of in arithmetic topics, geometry, reading comprehension, then you come to the smaller rocks. So the smaller rocks are questions where you get or topics where you get 1 to 2 questions in quant. So these are essentially things like for example Venn diagrams. This is a very important topic because it has usage in DILR also, progressions and series, number systems. All of these get like you have like two questions from each of these topics. So these are important topics as far as CAT is concerned. But as I said, these are smaller rocks. So I'll say call these smaller rocks. So first you have to fit in the big rocks. Arithmetic means time, speed, distance, time and work, profit and loss, interest, percentages, ratio and proportion, averages. All of those topics actually form the bulk of quant these days. So arithmetic is the big rock you have to fit in first. In terms of verbal, RC is like 70% of your paper. So you have to fit in that before you fit in anything else. So that is how you should look at CAT as such. What are the big things that you need to get right? So the big things you need to get right are arithmetic, geometry and RC. Those should be your first focus in the remaining 30 days. After that, you should go to the smaller topics such as smaller emphasis topics such as Venn diagrams, progressions in series, number systems. In terms of DILR, you have to now look at logical representation of information. So logical rules, formats for writing specific DILRs. So there are specific representational formats how you represent information that is given in a DILR. So if you are given a table based DILR, you are supposed to write down the table and fill in the missing information. If you are given a arrangement question, you have multiple ways in which you can represent arrangement information. So you need to remember how exactly you should represent information for each of those cases. So logical rules, formats of representation, all of these are smaller rocks that you need to fit in next. In terms of verbal, you have PJs and OOCs. Those are the next important things that you need to tackle in verbal. And then let's come to SAND. So SAND are the smaller topics from which you can expect 1 to 2 questions. In terms of verbal, you can say that PS, which is it is still it's not exactly irrelevant because there are still 3 questions that you have you can expect from para summary. Still, most people don't get to para summary part, and even there the effort that is mostly needed is the effort that will actually make you better in RC as such. So if you work on your reading comprehension, you will also get better at para summary. So I would say that leave para summary as a last topic where you work on it after you have covered the bigger topics as such. In terms of DILR, these are like, now you start with the specific DILR sets. Now you look at scheduling, you look at games and tournaments, you look at specific cases and how to solve those specific cases. So that's what you come to in terms of DILR. In quant, you have you have functions, you have PNC. I'm putting quadratic, linear and inequalities in this bracket. Though these are fundamental topics, the thing is that the finer aspects of quadratic equations, linear equation, inequalities aren't that often used. Like for example, how to derive one quadratic equation from another. That is not really needed for you to solve a quadratic equation. The fundamental knowledge of these topics is actually very necessary to solve the arithmetic questions. So I'm assuming that the fundamental knowledge of these 3 topics you will have already done when you are doing arithmetic. The finer aspects of it, like how to derive one quadratic equation from another, finding maxima, minima, all of those are like slightly advanced topics, advanced part of these 3 topics. I'm saying those you can do later because those like you can expect one question from it, and those you can actually leave for later because they are smaller topics and you need to take care of the bigger topics before you come to them. So that's what that's essentially, and logarithms also. So essentially this is one way of looking at the work that has to be done. We could have the schedule that I suggested for 50 days was essentially how to maximize the amount of marks you can get. There you are assuming that you had enough time to actually go about most of the portion. Here what I'm assuming is that if you have left a lot of work for the last 30 days, there's a realistic chance that you won't be able to cover all topics sufficiently enough. That is, you won't be able to get adequate practice in all of these topics. If that is the case, then I want you to handle the bigger topics first. I want you to have a very good practice in arithmetic, geometry and RC. Those are the make or break topics. You can't avoid them as such. So get the bigger rocks done properly. Make sure you put in enough amount of effort and practice in it. Then handle the smaller rocks. Then come to the sand as such. So this is what I would recommend. Given that there's only 30 days left, have this priority order in your mind. What you need to get done first. Get the big things done first. Absolutely very important that you don't go after smaller things, keep chasing smaller things like functions, and then you lose sight of bigger things like arithmetic and geometry. You should have this priority order in your mind, like fixed in your mind. You have to get things done in a order in such a way that your big things are definitely done. The smaller rocks are also 90% done, and the sand is like 60 to 70% done at least. So that should be your this. If you put in 3 to 4 hours every day from now till CAT, you should easily get all of these done. But if you don't have the time, then there's a realistic possibility that you will have to leave some parts of the last topics as such. So I would prefer that you leave the last topics like functions or PNC rather than bigger topics such as arithmetic. So have this priority order when you go through your preparation from now on. So we have made like a week by week schedule from 25th October to 23rd November. So we had a final batch of crash course starting 25th October. There we have actually given everything that you need in one schedule. All the questions that you need to see, all the classroom video that you need to see, the questions that you need to solve, everything is made for you. In case you're not subscribed to the crash course, we'll write down how you can actually approach making your own schedule for the next 30 days. So here I'm suggesting one schedule that you could follow if you don't have a schedule that is made for you. So the first thing I would say is that we'll have to first handle the big rocks. So this first thing I would start off with would be geometry. So in these 3 days, make sure you see every single formula for triangles, circles, polygons. I'm assuming that also includes quadrilaterals. So these are the main chunks that you should get absolutely done in this period. So I'm saying you should know all the formulae that are there, and that you should have practice of each formula. So each formula you should have practice of at least 3 to 4 questions. So you should know exactly how to apply that formula. So in triangles, you must know all the triangle properties, similarity of triangles, congruency, area of triangles, everything. You should have triangles down. Similarly with circles. These are fundamental topics, and it's very important that you have very good practice or very good hold of all subtopics of this domain. So I would suggest spend a bulk of the time of the next these 3 days as such covering all the fundamentals of geometry. Optionally, I would if you spend 3 to 4 hours during these 3 days, then you can also cover solids and coordinate geometry. But in case you're not able to complete that in this time frame, then leave that for later. The thing with solids and coordinate geometry is that you can expect one question from each, and they are kind of subsets of geometry. As in, if you don't know triangles, there is a very good chance that you won't be able to solve a question from solids. If the solid is a cylinder, mostly is a cone, sometimes the fundamental that you'll actually need to apply would come from triangles. Similarly, at times if it is a sphere, you will need circle properties. So these are kind of fundamental. The solids are like formulas of solids, formulas of coordinate geometry are necessary, but you can leave that for later. So you can consider it like this is the big rock part of it, this is the sand part of it. You can leave that for later if you're not able to fit it in within these 3 days. After this, what I need you to do is for RC, I need you to attempt 1 RC every day for these 3 days. So essentially 3 into 1 RC each day. And I need you to make sure that you have 1 RC to solve for the next 30 days. So this is more of a planning or scheduling rather than actual work. I need you to make sure that you have sufficient resources so that you can solve 1 RC every single day from now till 23rd November. Every single day you need to solve 1 RC. That should be your goal. So you need not solve 30 RCs in these 3 days. You solve 1 RC a day for the remaining 30 days. While solving the RC, it's important that you know how you have read the passage. You have this approach down where you read the passage, you know the main point of each paragraph, you know the main point of the passage. You have a technique done, technique in your mind to how to approach this reading comprehension. And essentially each RC is an application of that technique. So I want you to make sure that you have 30 RCs with you so that you can attempt 1 each day. So this is more preparation rather than actual exercise or actual practice. So if you have all of this done in these 3 days, it's a pretty good start where you have started filling the rocks as such. The way I'm going to actually describe how to go about the remaining days is I'm assuming that you have something like 3 to 4 hours every day. Many people who are working do not get that much time, but at least you should put in 2 hours every day. Ideally, you should have 3 hours. Some of the things that I described will require more than 3 hours. It will require 4 hours. The thing is that if you have 3 hours of concentrated time, that is equivalent to like 6 hours of studying where you're not very concentrated. So always make sure that the 3 hours that you put in, you don't look at your phone, you don't look here and there. Those 3 hours should be completely focused on this. If you are if you're taking breaks and all, it will actually stretch on much beyond 3 hours. But assume that you have 3 hours of concentrated work. So this is your flat line from day 0 to day 30. So this is 3 hours every day. So initially what I was saying is that initially your bulk of the work that will be there will be essentially, let's say this is the line. So this area is conceptual learning and this area, yellow area, is practice. So as you start off, you'll be focusing more on the concepts, revising, learning, making sure you understand the concept and the formula, understand the approach, understand the technique better. So initially the focus would be on conceptual aspect. As you go along, the part of conceptual learning should go down significantly. After that, most of your time should, of that 3 hours should be spent actually on practice. So my schedule will also reflect that. The number of things you have to get done will actually keep reducing in terms of lessons or topic coverage. But in fact, in its place, I will be suggesting that you do more of practice work. Ultimately, the thing that you have to remember is that you need to have a lot of practice actually solving. It's one thing to know a formula, it's completely different to know when to apply it. It's very difficult to have a solid hold on fundamentals and know exactly where to apply what. That will only come through practice. So after a certain point of time, the conceptual part will actually become almost zero. There I will ask you to revise a few things, but your bulk of the focus would be on practice after a given point. So let's start. In the initial weeks, we are focusing more on the conceptual learning, revising all the formulas that you need to remember, revising all the techniques that you need to go through. As I said in RC, now I'm telling you to just directly attempt the RC. Earlier I said you need to improve, work on some reading, read editorials and etc. That time has now passed. Now you can't focus on editorials or books. Now you need to focus only on RCs. Reading good RC questions, reading good RC passages is the best way you can prepare for RCs, given that there are only 30 days left. So this is how I would suggest that you start preparing. Now that you have these 3 days down, what do you do next? So here I've taken care of 2 big rocks, that is geometry, and I've started you on RC. So clearly the third big rock is remaining, that's arithmetic. And I cannot emphasize enough how important arithmetic is for you to crack CAT. So essentially time, speed, distance, time and work, P&L, interest, mixtures, analogation, ratio and proportion, the percentages, averages, all of these things are hugely important for CAT. These will form like a fundamental core of CAT essentially. This will be like 30 to 40% of your quant. So given how big emphasis there is on these questions, it is very important that you actually do very well in all of these questions. So the next big thing I need you to do is tackle all of these topics. Make sure you know all the formulas that are there. In time, speed and distance, see every single subtype that is there. See every question about, see all the concepts that are there about relative velocity, circular tracks, boats, races, every single thing that is there in TSD, every single subpart that is there in TSD, you should have a very good idea about every nomenclature, all the formulas that you need to remember. Time, speed, distance is no longer just like the time is equal to distance by speed. That's one formula that will help you solve quite a few questions, but being good at this means that you have all of the smaller sub-formulas derived from this formula also at your fingertips. It will help you save time. It will make sure that your attempts are more accurate as such. So that is very important. Second is time and work. Be very, very good at efficiency questions where finding how much time it will take to finish a job, how much time it will take to finish, empty a tank, fill a tank. All of these things should be very, very easy to you. These questions are like very, very easy to solve, and you should be able to solve them without any hesitation as such. So adequate practice as well as a very strong hold on all the formulas that are there. Just sit, find out all the formulas that are there in these topics. Sit with books, sit with Kraku has a lot of cheat sheets that are available for free. So just go on to kraku.in, go to quantitative aptitude, go to all of these sections, just see our topics, see the cheat sheets. There's a list of formula that is there. All of these topics have a list of formula there for your easy reference. So all of this information, much of it is available for free. Just make sure you have gone through all of it, and after that you start preparing by solving questions on each of it. You should solve at least 5 questions, 10 questions to make sure that you have completely understood the formula. P&L seems like an easy topic, but there are a lot of tricky aspects to it. What is a mark price? What is discount? How much discount is measured on what? Profit is measured as a percentage of what? All of these are finer points, and they'll come to you only if you practice, if you actually learn and revise those things. So make sure you put in that effort and make sure you have every single thing down from these topics. These topics are fairly easy. You should not miss a question from this topic. So that's like, we have now taken care of all the 3 big rocks. Now the 3 big rocks are done, so we come to the smaller rocks. So as I had said, the smaller rocks are, this is like the 3rd big rock as such. The first smaller rock that I want you to actually handle is PJs and OOC. That's 7 questions for you in verbal, and it's extremely important that you have some practice doing this. These kind of test the same ability as reading comprehension. So you can consider this as a practice of reading comprehension also. This is going to help you in reading comprehension. If you are able to understand the chain of thought, understand the flow of the paragraph, you will be able to understand reading comprehension also better. So I need you to practice, see different types of PJs, see what tools that are you can use to like connect different lines to unscramble a paragraph. So essentially this is this of smart work. You should know how to approach PJs, how to approach OOCs, and you need a lot of practice doing that. So essentially this should be your next line of attack. Now we'll come to DILRs. So essentially DILRs, the first thing you need to do is you need to understand how to represent logical information. So a lot of logical information is given in LRs. Nowadays DIs have kind of melded into LRs, where DIs are like extended forms of LRs. So it's important that you have a good understanding of how to represent logical information. You should be very good with understanding what is given. So if something says that A and not B, you should understand it immediately what that means. Similarly, you should have a very good idea of the representation formats. So in terms of like in a way that you can understand, for each type of question that is there in LR, so there are different types of questions that come in DILRs. There are arrangement questions, there is scheduling, there is games and tournaments, there are like 2D space LRs. In DIs you have charts, bar graphs, you have missing information in tables, you have Venn diagram based questions. So in all of these cases, this is no way exhaustive list, because it's impossible to make an exhaustive list. These guys keep on finding new ways to test students, so there will be no exhaustive list. But what I'm saying is that for each of these that I have listed out, we have been through many classroom sessions where we have said, okay, if it's an arrangement question, these are the possible ways you can represent the information. So go through all the different representation formats. Once you have a good idea of what the representation formats are available, you will have a good foundation on which to practice. So here is where your practice time starts. Till now I was saying like revise. Now you have to read and revise all of this. In addition to that, you need to practice. So what do you need to practice from now on? So apart from the PJs and OOCs and the arithmetic questions that we'll be doing as part of revision and representation of information, what I need you to practice from this in this entire week is, you need to solve for each day. You need to solve 2 DILR sets, 1 RC. The 1 RC I already mentioned that you need to have an RC ready for each day. Just have this schedule in front of you saying that this day I'm going to solve this RC, this day I'm going to solve this RC. You need not know the RC you're solving, but you should make sure that you have 30 RCs at your disposal. So you need to solve 2 DILR sets, 1 RC set, and 10 quant questions daily. This is in addition to the practice that you'll be getting in arithmetic and in this. So essentially this is your revision part. This is your learning conceptual part. After you're done with this, you have to make sure that you have the practice session as such. That is 2 DILR sets, 1 RC set, and 10 quant questions. So one way you can do this is that we have excellent topic tests on Kraku.in. You can go and take a look at our study room where all of this will be readily available to you. We have like a lot of DILR sets, like several RCs, so you need not actually do any work in finding or scavenging RCs or DILR sets. Each of these things will be just readily available to you. In case it's not available, you can see previous papers. Just take previous papers, see what RCs came there, see what DILRs came there. So always make sure that you are solving, in addition to revising, you are also solving each day. So this is as I said, this is your conceptual revision. And this is the practice part. So this, I've started slowly adding the practice layer. Earlier it was mostly conceptual revision. Now we have both of them. Now let's go on to the next week. That's the 4th November to 10th November this. Now I've taken care of some of the smaller rocks, but some smaller rocks are still remaining. So the big chunk that, big smaller rock that I have not touched till now is number systems. The reason why I call it a smaller rock and I'm kind of de-emphasizing its importance is because I know a lot of students spend a lot of time on remainder theorems questions, and it's actually, I feel that time would be much better spent on like perfecting arithmetic or geometry. Number systems is an important topic, but its importance has actually decreased over the last few years in CAT, especially with the calculator being there. Having said that, you still need to tackle it. You need to tackle it after you have tackled all the other bigger rocks. So in this week, do number systems. Make sure you cover not just remainder theorems, but other number system questions. So actually the more questions that come are from factors, cyclicity of factors, divisibility. All of these are actually very important number system concepts. So all of these should also be tackled along with remainder theorems. Then you come to progressions and series. Also a very important topic because you get 2 to 3 questions from this. Make sure that you have not only a good hold on all the questions that are there in that, all the concepts that are there, but this is a topic that relies entirely on practice. So solve as many questions as you can from this topic. Third, I can't emphasize how important Venn diagrams are. The thing is that this is a fundamental topic. So you won't not only get like 1 to 2 questions directly in quant from Venn diagrams, you can get an entire LR set in DILR which you solve using Venn diagrams. So it's very important that you have very good fundamental knowledge of Venn diagrams. Know how to solve 2 set Venn diagrams, 3 set Venn diagrams, 4 set Venn diagrams, complicated Venn diagrams where relationships are given between different set values as such. So the more comfortable you are solving Venn diagrams, finding minima and maxima, the better it would be. So spend good chunk of your time over here. This is not just a quant topic, this is a quant and DILR topic essentially. So now that you have done that, now we come to the big thing that is in DILR. As I said earlier, I wanted you to, I listed down a few DILR types. I wanted you to go through them and see how to represent information for each of them. So for games and tournaments, there's one way to represent knockout tournaments, one way to represent multi-stage tournaments, there's one way to represent seating arrangement, there's one way to represent circular arrangement. Now we come to the actual implementation of it. So essentially from now on, I want you to actually look at like scheduling, specific types of this scheduling arrangement, games and tournament. So here you should basically be solving questions. So solving sets. So this is essentially implementing or applying what you have learned in terms of representation. So if you know what how that representation framework works, now you are basically just using that, saying okay, if this is how you represent scheduling information, now I'll solve one LR set using this kind of framework to actually fix it in my head that this is how I represent scheduling information. Arrangement, there are a lot of questions that can come on arrangement. Nowadays arrangement is gotten slightly complicated, where there are, instead of like your usual seating arrangement, there is still arrangement. There are like 6 people in a tournament and all, but there are additional rules that you need to consider while arranging people. So the more this you have in terms of arrangement, the better, more practice. There are just many forms of representation of arrangement, ways of representing information in arrangement. So you need a lot of practice there. Games and tournaments can come. It's one of the important topics, and it's one of those topics where if you know how to represent the this, you get the entire LR set right. If you know how to write down the information, it's pretty easy after that. So always make sure now that you have come to the pointy end of the preparation, make sure that now you are applying what you have learned in terms of representation of information. Also in terms of like DIs, solve as many table based DIs as possible. So essentially the skill that I want you to practice here is, you see a bar graph, you translate it into a table, or you are given some information where there is a table with missing information, you fill another table out of it, or you are given one table, but to answer the questions you need to form a table based on this table. So essentially this is a lot of practice where you have to do a lot of calculation and translation of information from one form to a table based form, so that that table based form is easy for you to actually answer the questions that are given. A lot of questions like DILR sets are just like that, where you in the end you need to form a table, and once you have that table in front of you, it's easy for you to answer all 4 questions immediately on the basis of that table. So that is another thing that I need you to actually work on. DILRs are not conceptual, as in it's not something that you have to remember a formula, it's a learned art. So you have to basically keep practicing things out of it. So you see a format, you see a representational format, you solve a question using it. That's the only way you can actually get better at this. So I would suggest that keep going through all the different kinds of DILR sets that have come in the recent CATs, and just keep solving different types from those like those types of DILRs as such. So that is the so I've covered quant, I've covered DILR. So the last thing that is left that you have to do here is para summary. So make sure that you get some so in para summary there are some ways, some techniques that you need to learn to quickly make one line para summary as such. But this again relies on your ability to understand, or like essentially reading comprehension skills. So come to this only if you have like had a like good this base of reading comprehension. If you're good at reading comprehension, you will be good at para summary. If you're not good at reading comprehension, you won't be able to handle para summary questions also. So that's the crux of it. If you handle the big rocks properly, you'll be able to handle these things properly. So now this is the conceptual part you have to actually do. There's a lot of work to be done, definitely a lot of work that has to be done in conceptually over here. But I want you to also ramp up the practice in this month, in this week. So in this week, I'm going to slightly ramp up the practice. So you have to do one LR set every day. So this is daily. So not over the week. I don't want you to solve one LR set. That won't do it. When I say LR, I mean LR or DI set. 1 RC, 2 PJs or OOC. The skills tested in each case are the same, so it doesn't matter which of those you choose. Just try to make sure you have a healthy balance among them. And I want you to solve 15 quant questions each day. So this is the practice part of it. These quant questions can come from number systems, progressions and series. Can be focused on the questions that you are actually just learned, because that's actually a good way to learn, where you learn and you practice immediately. So you can take questions from these topics so that you get a very good handle on those topics. So now that you know what to do in this week, let's go on to the next week. Now this week is where we have handled much of the bigger rocks and the smaller rocks. Now we come to the sand bit of it. So this is where it comes up. This is where you have to handle topics like functions, PNC, quadratic equations, linear equations, inequalities. Of these, I would suggest that have a very good, make sure that you have a very good basic understanding of quadratic equations and linear equations. Here you need those to actually solve many of the arithmetic questions, because at times what you will get after answering the arithmetic question, you might get a quadratic equation which you have to solve. Even in geometry, you will often end up with a quadratic equation where one value is a positive value and the other value is a negative value, and then you can eliminate the negative value, etc. So these are fundamental concepts that are required elsewhere. When I said work on quadratic equations, linear equations and inequalities in this week, I'm saying that the more advanced topics, subtopics of this topic as such. If you have missed out on coordinate geometry and solids in the first few days, this is the time to actually cover those things. These are all of these topics are essentially one question each. So if you do all of these topics, you'll get like 5 to 6 questions each. And it's a pretty good return on your effort that you're going to spend. But because they're just one question each, if you miss out on functions, that's fine. If you miss out on solids, that's fine. But you can't miss out on geometry, because then you won't be able to, you can't miss out on triangles, because then you won't be able to probably solve even the solids question, because that might be the fundamental concept of triangles would be needed even in the solids questions and all. So always make sure that you have a good base of the bigger rocks before you come to these questions. Now that you have a, now that we have we have like revised everything that is left in quant. If I missed out any of the smaller topics, please feel free to cover it in this week. Now and we have covered all the verbal topics and the DILR as such. Now this is just the, this is the conceptual part. As you can see, the conceptual part is pretty limited in this week. Now here, this is where practice comes in. This is going to form the bulk of what you do in this week. In this, I need you to do 2 DILR sets every day. One RC, 3 PJs OOC, 1 para summary and 20 quant questions. If you see, the load is actually lesser than the last week, because the reason why I have actually put lesser load is, in terms of practice, now I want you to focus not just on solving these things, but making sure that you get them absolutely right. As in, your accuracy is should be the focus over here. When you're solving the RC, you should make sure that your RC is like perfect. If anything goes wrong in that RC, you need to like deep dive into why it went wrong. So essentially, not just solve, but analyze. That should be your focus in this week, where you are like practicing and you're focusing on understanding what you're doing wrong. This is the last chance you'll actually get to course correct on certain things. If you're making certain mistakes again and again, for example, in RC, if you're like reading the RC in an incorrect way such that you have to reread the RC multiple times, etc. This is where you need to actually put a stop to it, because if you don't do it in this, it would be completely, it won't happen at all. So this is where you need to actually figure out where your weak areas are, analyze your performance, find out what you need to do to improve. So again with the 20 quant questions, I need you to actually spread it over different topics. Don't take it from one topic, don't take it from your favorite topics. Make sure you have enough representation of all topics over here. Essentially follow the weightage that is given, roughly the weightage that is there in CAT. So a good way to solve this would be actually solving quant sectionals. Would be good practice for you to actually cover all of the this, because quant sectionals will follow the general CAT weightage. So this would be a good way to practice quant, RC, DILRs, everything. So make sure that you take sectionals from this point on. So sectionals and mocks. So this week essentially I need you to practice a lot. This practice can take form of mocks and sectionals, or it can be in the form of topic tests that you decide, but you should be solving and analyzing where you're going on. So now that we have figured out what to do this week, Let's go on to the next week, that is 18th to 23rd November. So essentially in this, now there is nothing conceptual revision that is left. So this is just full on practice. So full on practice, what do you need to do? So this is something that I had done when I took CAT. So I was fortunate enough to get like a week off before CAT. You might not get that kind of time, but make sure that you spend at least 4 hours in the last week. And the thing that happened was that I took this week off before CAT and I just locked myself in the room, just started solving. I solved all previous papers, everything that I could get my hands on. So I just kept solving till the point that where I was like this so zoned into just solving and practicing that I was not thinking of it like as a CAT paper or anything of that sort. I was just focused on solving. Every question, there was nothing new about it to me. There wasn't any hesitation in terms of approaching or attacking a question. So this is how you get into that zone where you are just so focused on solving the question that you don't have time to doubt yourself or doubt your abilities. So this week, just focus, like lock yourself in a room and just solve previous papers. Take mocks every other day. The reason why I say every other day is because mocks are draining. They mentally fatigue you. So you can't take a mock every day. If you're able to take it and you're able to survive it, well and good, go ahead. But I would suggest that don't tire yourself out unnecessarily. Take mocks every other day and spend time analyzing the mocks. This is something that I find a lot of students not doing. They continue to be weak in certain areas, but they do nothing to address that. This is the time you need to actually analyze the mocks, figure out what is going wrong. I make sure that you revise any concept that would actually help you get better at a particular topic. Make sure that you put in more time and effort in the areas that you are weak in, that areas where you're underperforming as such. Now, apart from the mocks and previous papers, practice RCs, the 1 RCs every day, 2 DILRs every day, and 20 quant questions. So if you're taking a mock, you can just practice RCs and DILRs. You can skip the quant questions because otherwise it might be too much. But if you're just doing previous papers where it's not in a timed manner, then you need to do all of these in addition to the papers that you're doing. So essentially get into this zone where you see a question, you believe that you will be able to solve it. Much of doing well in CAT is self-belief. If you get into the zone where you believe, yeah, this is a question that I've seen, I've solved 100 questions correctly, I can definitely solve the 101st question correctly. It's like a frame of mind that you need to get into, and that will only come through practice. That self-confidence is built, it's built and earned, and you will earn it if you keep practicing and solving correctly. If you solve 100 questions right, you'll believe in yourself that you'll be able to solve the 101st question right. If you don't solve questions, if you don't practice, if you don't take mocks, you won't have that self-belief. So in that case, even if you have the knowledge, it won't translate onto paper because much of this is self-belief. So this is your plan for till 23rd November. On 24th November, please don't do anything. Just do nothing, absolutely nothing. Just rest. Don't do anything that is even slightly mentally fatiguing. So absolutely no mental fatigue. So no revision. I know this is difficult for many people. Even I, irrespective of, when I was preparing for CAT, I got this feedback from a lot of faculty saying don't do anything one day before CAT, but even I ignored it. I was too tempted to like see formulas and all, but there's a reason for it. There's a non-delta chance that you will start revising or start solving papers or taking mocks. So no solving, no mocks, nothing. So the reason why they say that is that because the thing is that if you started one day before, you can, if you solve papers or start revising, you can psych yourself. You can psych yourself by feeling that, you know what, I can't do this. And that, as I feel, is a much bigger negative than anything that you can actually do in one day. In one day, you won't be able to improve your chances significantly, but you can hamper them significantly if you lose confidence. That's why there's a reason why most faculty say that don't do anything on 24th November because firstly you will be resting your brain so that you are like well rested on 25th. Secondly, you will have your confidence will not be shaken. because many students panic one day before CAT. It's not helpful. It will not improve your chances at all to panic just one day before CAT. Don't do it. Just rest that day. Don't do anything that is mentally fatiguing. Do not stay up late. Do not do anything which is actually affect you the next day. So just take a free day off. Watch movies. Just do whatever you enjoy. Just relax. Be in a positive frame of mind that day. That will help you a lot on 25th November. So this is the plan we advised for the next 30 days for CAT. In case you're just starting, don't panic. Just try to follow this to the best of your ability. If you're wondering how exactly to do the things that I've mentioned, well, Kraku has a lot of will help you a lot in doing that. Please just check the description box. Firstly, for our free mock and free topic test. We also have all the previous papers that are solved and in exam format. So if you want to take previous papers, we have that at kraku.in. And in addition to that, we have a lot of resources for you to do everything that I have just described. From topic tests, from RCs, from LRs, everything that you need will be there. From sectionals and mocks, everything is available on kraku.in. So don't fear, don't panic. We are there to help you. Just go and see the description box and start preparing. Thank you.